Hi everyone, hope you're all doing well. Welcome to a little bit of a later edition of the UK Slate today. We are really lucky to be joined by Aisha Bywaters, casting director extraordinaire, who has been working in casting for the last 13 years. She's worked on projects like The Last Tree, which was nominated for the Best Cast in BIFA, Cyberbully with Maisie Williams, The Watchman with Stephen Graham, County Lines, which is something that I haven't seen yet, but I'm really excited to see. Make Me Famous, Enterprise and Lady Parts. And we're going to be really deep diving today into a couple of different topics than usual. So we obviously will cover everything from the actor's perspective and try and get some really good advice there for you guys at the moment, especially with the state of play with things that are going on at the moment. But we're also going to be talking about filmmakers and how filmmakers can best work with casting directors and how that collaboration works and how to make the most out of that environment and relationship for yourselves. I have had loads of questions in before, so thank you so much for sending those in. If you have any questions, please do pop them in the Q&A box and I will try my best to get to them. But first of all, hello. Hi, Aisha.
Hello.
Thank you so much for doing this with us today and later on in the day as well. Let's just start off by what inspired you to get into acting initially? How did that all begin for you?
So what inspired me, basically, my mum was an actress. So I've always been around acting. When I was 5, she was in the Royal Shakespeare Company and we lived in Stratford-upon-Avon, and I used to go to rehearsals after school. So it's something I always was around, basically. I toyed with being an actor and then I joined the National Youth Theatre and it was all great. But when my mum was an actress, because she no longer is one, now she works at drama school, she, it was amazing when she was working, but you don't work all the time. And I had a difficulty with that, that career path. It's sort of really difficult and I really, really respect actors. I think what they do is absolutely amazing, but you really have to put yourself out there, and it might not work out the way you want it to. But I loved being around actors and what they do, and so I sort of left university knowing that I wanted to work in some way in the arts, but didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. Worked for a theatre company. Tamasha Theatre Company in London, Tamasha, and then while I was there, I helped the director cast a play, and was like, I didn't really know that was a job. I didn't really know there was a job of a casting director. I always thought that the director did that job, and then started to look into it more, and intern for a lot of people, basically, trying to find my place. I really wanted to work in theatre casting, because that was a world that I knew that what I'd come from. My mum had done a lot of theatre, I've been in National Youth Theatre. I used to go to the theatre a lot. I love that. So that's what I thought I'd do. But on my journey, I ended up getting a job with Shaheen Baig and staying there for 6.5 years and just loving working in film and television.
Yeah. So what did you study in university, first of all?
So I studied politics. So that's why I just didn't mention it, because it's quite different.
So what happened there in the interim when you were younger, when you were deciding what you were going to do at that point? Was there a reason why it was politics and not something in the arts?
I just wanted to do something I was interested in. If, in all honesty, I knew that I wanted to work in the arts in some capacity. We sort of had an agreement that was with my mum and I, that sort of, because of the career that she had, it's good to go get a degree. So I was like, I want to do it in something that I'm interested in. And I'd always been interested in politics, but I felt that I couldn't speak about it, didn't know enough about it. So it gave me the opportunity to go and learn more about it. And then through that, also 100% confirm that I didn't want a career in politics.
Did you finish though? Was that like you did the 3 years and then you...
Yeah, and I loved it, and it was a great experience, but I left it knowing that I was going to go find a job in the arts in some capacity. So I left. And like I said, I loved theatre, so trying to find a job in theatre. And while I was at uni, I wrote a play. I actually did on the side courses in sort of musical theatre and playwriting, and I also was in plays throughout the whole time I was at university.
Yeah, so your foot was well and truly still
Yeah,
dipping
yeah,
in throughout. Yeah,
yes.
wow. Is your course in politics in any way helped or informed any of the work that you do now? Like, was there anything that you did take out of that time which has been useful for you in
I mean,
creating?
for me personally, it's definitely useful. Like, I spent a whole uh, term doing a course on political leaders and what sort of personality types they are. And, you know, so I think in terms of acting and looking at characters, it feels very much the same. I did a module on political speeches, and where I actually was comparing speeches to Henry, you know, Shakespeare's Henry V. So I was always trying to come back to it
Yeah,
in what I was doing. So yes, and then I suppose, you know, casting is political. You have to certain decisions that are made are to do with, you know, what's happening at this moment in time in the world, and also how you speak to people, how you sort of get your opinions, you know, across, and how you help people decide their decisions. There are definitely things that are political in the way you make those decisions. So it's been massively helpful.
wow, that's really interesting. So when you left and it was casting that you then went into, obviously with your background with theatre, and then you started working with Shaheen. The theatre casting world and the film and TV casting world are relatively separate in that, you know, a casting director will usually specialize in theatre or film. Have you worked in theatre, or is it just film and TV that you've worked in since you've started working as a casting director?
So I've worked in theatre slightly. So I actually cast a play last year. That was at the Hackney showroom, but that's the first time I've worked in theatre in a long time. And before I worked for Shaheen, I worked for the Royal Shakespeare Company, doing an internship there for about a month, and then I worked with Pippa Alien in musicals, doing an internship there for a month or so. But yeah, most of my casting experience is now in film and television. So for me personally, that was really interesting because I had to learn. And in Shaheen, I had an amazing teacher. And it was just a case of, you know, back at that point, actually, you get a lot of show reels and you get a lot of DVDs of TV or film that people were in. So it was just like, we've got all this material here, watch it. So every time I check an actor that I didn't know, I'd be able to sort of scroll through, get a DVD and watch something and learn about that person. And then actually, as a present once, she got me, shows hold down, a Love Film account. So again, it was like getting DVDs through, watching actors, watching filmmakers, because I had a knowledge and a passion for film and television, but I didn't realize until that point how skewed it was to the American market,
Right.
and how most of the actors I knew were American. So who was here?
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, so I had to learn, and it was great because I got to watch lots of stuff, and I'm passionate about actors. So yeah, it was wonderful.
So Shaheen has worked on some of my favorite films actually, and you alongside Shaheen, you know, really amazing stuff. How much because I think from what I've seen in my mind, she has a taste which is quite recognizable. So how does that, when you're working with somebody, inform your own taste, and how do you explore what you like but also try and keep to what your casting director, your boss is, what they like?
Yeah, I mean, I worked for quite a few different people. So I worked for, not for as long as with Shaheen, but I worked for Maisie Williams on a Bond film for a few weeks. I worked with Shaheen, as I said, I worked with Pippa Alien on musicals. I worked at the RSC. I learned lots of different types of ways of casting. I also worked at Crowley Pool for a little bit. So all these people have their own taste. And I think, you know, if you watch most casting directors' work, you can definitely see who did it. As an employee, you've got to do that. So the first thing you've got to do is just to understand. So hopefully over a period of time, you quickly learn to understand who they like, who they don't like, who they respond to, who they don't respond to. But it's also not as simple as that, because it's based upon what you're doing.
Yeah.
Because people can be reinvented. So it's about thinking about, you know, okay, that actor normally might not be to their taste, but could we do something here? And yeah, then it's about suggesting trial and error. And I'm sure that through working with people, their taste affects your taste. Do you know what I mean? For The Last Tree, I again worked with Shaheen, even though I'd not worked at her company for many years. And our taste similar enough that we could agree on the people that I found after she'd been working on it for a period. And then we could have conversations about that. So we'll always be able to work together because we understand each other's taste. But over time, you start to see there are some people that you respond to more than that person might. So that's when you sort of start to think about, you know, is it time to go on my own? I'd like to explore that. I'd like to be the one that makes all those decisions, see if I can do it, and really have it be about my own taste. It takes a while to develop your taste, and it takes a while to be confident enough to say, actually, this is the person.
Yeah.
That I think should have this role, because there is no right and wrong. And it would be fascinating if we let 5 casting directors all cast something.
Yeah.
And saw who, you know, maybe some would be the same, maybe some would be different, who knows. And I'm sure it might slightly change what those pieces of work are. And that's, I think, how people should pick their casting directors.
Yeah. So that decision then, let's talk a little bit about that. And by the way, thank you everyone for writing in the chat box. Please keep it coming. We've got people from all over: Toronto, California, London, Philippines, Missouri. Cool. And questions, keep them coming in as well. Hi from Portugal. Cool. That's somewhere I wish I was right now. So let's talk about when you did make that decision to go out on your own. How did that feel? So you were a freelancer, or maybe you were on a contract with Shaheen. Making those steps, how much of a massive decision was that for you?
I suppose it took a while to, you know, fully lean into that. I suppose I could have left before I did. But I was having such a great time, and we were making such great projects. And I mean, she still is now. So yeah, it's just about really wanting to, I just wanted to see if I could do it.
Yeah, you can do it.
There are lots of people that I know who are absolutely brilliant, and they stay and they work with their sort of bosses or mentors, as I'd call them, for long periods. And it was something that you have to really think about. Do you want to stay or do you want to go? I just wanted to know if I could do it myself.
Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah, and you obviously definitely can. And very recently, last month, I believe, they announced that you were one of the Screen Stars of Tomorrow. So could you tell everyone a bit about the Screen Stars of Tomorrow? Because I feel like if actors and filmmakers don't know about this list, It's a really important list. It's something that I always keep an eye on. And now you're one of them. So yeah, could you tell us a bit about what that is?
Yeah, so I mean, it's a list of actors, directors, producers, and now other HODs. So it didn't used to actually have, sometimes there would be casting directors and other HODs included, but now there will always be a casting director and a costume designer, and which is great. And it's sort of looking towards the future and people that they think will go on and sort of, you know, are ones to watch, basically. So it's absolutely amazing to be thought of and regarded in that way. And then really exciting to be included with all those other people. For me personally, I'd always look at that list for actors. So for me to be included is absolutely amazing, because it's something that I look forward to every year. Seeing who they put on that list. So it's really, really great.
Yeah, it's really exciting. So have they just started doing that HOD thing, or is that
last year they started?
Right.
Yeah.
Who was last year's casting director? Do you know?
So last year's casting director was Isabella Adoffin.
Oh yeah, of course it
Blue
was.
Story, and yeah.
Cool. Very cool. So let's have a little chat about filmmakers and the relationship that you have with them, and how people can best use that relationship in their projects and work with casting directors properly. So if you're a filmmaker and you're just starting out and you've not had the luxury of being able to afford or go after a casting director for a previous project, where would you start? So where would be a good place to start to find the right casting director for you?
So I suppose there's a number of things that you can do. There's looking at the Casting Directors Guild if you're in the UK. There's looking at things that you admire the work of and seeing who cast those. What I would do is I would look at, if this is your first time ever looking for a casting director, I would look at who's casting really interesting short films, because people who cast short films are usually open to new projects, new material. You know, sometimes people are just not at the point anymore where they take on slightly smaller budgets, which you might have. So that's just a quick and easy way of being like, okay, these people are interested in this sort of work, you know, see who's, you know, who's in the shorts for the Oscars, the shorts for, you know, the BAFTAs, what shorts are playing at film festivals, depending on what country you're in. And then I would also look at casting directors in whatever country you're based, or whatever country you might be shooting out of, because that might be where you need to look. And then look at who works for them, because people seem to slightly ignore the people that work for casting directors, but they're in that office, they're doing a lot of the work every day, and they've probably got really great taste to be in that office. So see, you know, who they are, if they're interested in working with you, because they're the casting directors of tomorrow. So jump in early.
Yeah, definitely. So say if, and I know this has happened with a couple of different offices from some of my friends who work in casting as well. So a filmmaker, if they were like, right, well, I really like Shaheen, or I really like Nina, or I really like you, anybody, but maybe my budget isn't big enough for working with this person, can they just contact that office and ask if they have assistants or associates, or do you feel like you should be addressing that person by name?
I don't think it matters. Like, if you can find out, obviously, for me, I don't think it's that difficult here, because if they're on the Casting Directors Guild, then there's the full members and the probationary members, and some of the probationary members are actually casting directors in their own right, and some of them are assistants, but you'll sort of find out. Do you know what I mean? I think it's very easy now to look on IMDb and see who worked with Nina on, and then from there, And even if it's just writing that person's name, but it can also just be, I love the work of this office and I'd love to work with someone from this office. If you know, you've got to try. I do think though, now you should be able to find a name quite easily if that's how you want to do it. But if you just want to keep it open, because obviously some people move from office to office, so you may never know who's exactly in an office at a certain point. Yeah, but fundamentally it's about just approaching people. I don't think if something's interesting to someone, they'll get back in touch. They're not going to be like, why didn't they know my name? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay. So so when you get to that point where you have found somebody that you want to work with and they're keen to start working with you, what are the things that you like to have? So at the beginning of a project, do you like to have, obviously you want a script, maybe a treatment, but do you like to have references of actors or ideas? How does that relationship begin off in the right foot for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's different people, different things. So some directors, their thing isn't actors, which is quite funny to think about, but it's true. There's someone that's more visual, or they're script led, or they've only ever worked with sort of friends maybe before, rather than, so they don't know. They're here for you to help them explore actors in a certain way. Or, you know, we've worked from directors from other countries who just don't know this market, or so it's fine. I suppose it's just about having an open dialogue, whatever that is, whether it is, I want you to be open with this and bring me what you think is right, or some people are very specific. So it's, yeah, just saying how you want the project to go ahead, because there are many different versions of, I can literally be what I call a recruitment agent, and that is you saying I want this, that and that person, and me trying to make that happen. And then if it doesn't, give you other suggestions, down to just, okay, let's just meet loads of people, keep it really open and see where we end up. I think you know what you want, even if you might not be able to articulate it. So then if you're not clear, that's fine. But hopefully as we go through the process, you will say, you know, sometimes by finding out what you don't like, we'll find out what you like.
Yeah.
But there has to come a point where you trust yourself. So that's the only thing I would say. Sometimes I've worked with directors who are never sure. At some point you've got to be sure, and you've got to trust your instincts. And they do know, it just takes them longer to get there. But sometimes that process can be quite tricky for them, because it feels like they're pushed into a corner by a financier or a producer, or rather than making a decision themselves. And so it's not as nice a process.
Yeah. And how much, if you are in that situation, or say a situation where you are like totally sold on an actor and you know that you want them to be it, and the director's not too sure, like how much within that relationship will you push for something that you want? Is ultimately the director producer's decision, right? But how much do you push and try and sway them in the direction that you want?
I'm not going to push someone. So I'm going to try and persuade. I'm going to talk about things logically. Who else have you seen that you like? Why did you like them? But as you said, it's fundamentally not my decision. And the one thing that I always have to remember is it's not my film, or it's not my TV show. It's not, I'm a part of the process, but I'm here to help you and to facilitate. So I really hope it ends up being a cast that I'm completely and utterly happy with, and were all my first choices. But that's not always the way, because what works for you, who can that director, you know, speak to, communicate with, get their vision across. So at the end of the day, for me, it really is about what is the story and who facilitates it. And if we can agree that the person you're casting does that, then I'm cool to move ahead and let you make your story. If I really think that the person that you're picking, that an audience isn't going to engage with, then I'm going to try and persuade you, or highlight the reasons why I don't believe that that person, the audience might not connect with the person that you're picking. And that does happen, and I could name many occasions where it does, and you have convinced someone to your way of thinking, and then they come back to you and they go, you always knew it would be. They're great, sorry it took me so long to get there. But that's fine, everyone's got to go on their process. Obviously, while it's happening, it's very frustrating, but everyone has to go on their process, and there's very few things where I am disappointed with the people that are cast. That doesn't mean that everything that I've ever worked on, I believe that the performances work, because that's a different thing. We pick people in a moment thinking they could do a job. We didn't ask them to read every scene. It's an instinct, it's a belief. Sometimes it just doesn't work. It's a creative process. It's not always going to be perfect. But going into it, I'm usually happy with where we've gone. There are moments like a film that you haven't seen, County Lines. For me, that's a piece of work that I'm utterly proud of the casting of. For me, I look at that cast and feel like everyone in that cast makes sense in those roles.
Oh my God, I can't wait to see it then. If a filmmaker isn't working with a casting director yet, they're not at that stage, they might be just starting out in filmmaking, how can filmmakers really be looking at their script and looking at their breakdown and trying to question any sort of like unconscious biases that they have, so that they're being very open to all manners of options? So I'm talking about inclusive casting and making sure that filmmakers are really taking that into consideration and thinking about why they're casting what they're casting. Is there anything that you like, any advice that you would give for being open in that sense?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's not a problem. For me, I will always ask. It's something that I always consider. It's sort of why I do my job. Also, if you look at a lot of projects that I cast, they're diverse anyway, but they are not. They are only diverse in terms of, it actually, that's something that I shouldn't say in that way, because in terms of casting people that are differently abled in terms of gender, they're not always diverse in terms of those things. So it's something that I actually have to think about as well and work on. I am not keen in casting people for the sake of it. So I get really disheartened sometimes if I see something and it's like, oh, that person was added because they should be, basically. If something is set somewhere, or something is written by someone and that's not the world that they are from and they understand, I don't think then every different type of person should be covered. I think that you should make more things that are relatable for more people. So I think it comes higher than us and from a commissioning level, but I will always try and cast as openly as possible. And like I said, just there I had to correct myself and think, well, actually, no, there are things that I need to work on and I need to consider. And that's something that I've got, to do in all my work, because one of the reasons that I am involved in casting and wanted to work within it is because I wanted to be seen and I wanted to see myself. And so that opportunity needs to be there for others as well. I think
good for
there are two things that we should think about. One is sort of I don't know who here has seen I May Destroy You, but it's a really good example of um, like that world was predominantly black in my eyes, or more black than I've seen on television, in terms of when she went to the police station, the police officer there was black, her therapist was black, the head of no, what I mean is not her therapist, sorry, and the head of the publishers was but it was just so many, her best mates were, it was just like, but it wasn't about them being black, it was just, this is the world that she wanted to create. So I think, like I said, it's just about giving other people that opportunity. And I think in terms of actors, you should be able to question. So in terms of if you are not, if you don't feel comfortable with playing something, then you shouldn't. Like, I love it when people say to me, will say no to a role because they don't want to play black people with accents anymore, or then it's like, cool, I know what you do, what you want to do and what you don't want to do, and that's great, then I know how to cast you. People should be doing things that make them happy, rather than just taking jobs because they feel that they have to, if it's a stereotype that they don't sort of agree with, or just something that they don't want to play, they sort of want to play themselves. The other thing I wanted to say is we just have to remember that we're going through something at the moment where things are becoming better slowly. We're not going to see those changes for a while, and I suppose with COVID some of those things will be even pushed slightly further back. So it's not going to be instant. You're not going to turn your television and things just be really diverse. Those things need to be written and made, and so just keep on believing is what I think. Don't be worried that if it's not on your screen now, doesn't mean that everyone's not working towards that.
Yeah, for sure. That leads me really nicely into actor chat. Actually, first of all, just going back quickly to filmmakers. Is there any advice that you would give to filmmakers around directing actors in the room? What are some of the don'ts or do's that you've seen for directors?
The only thing that I really don't think works is telling someone what to do.
As in,
Do you
like,
know what I mean? It's just like, well, I just think the scene is that he feels this then, and he feels that, and then you should do this, and then so it's just, you just tell someone exactly what to do. I suppose that might be some people's style, and fine, but that's not really much of a process. I don't know if an actor becomes an actor just to do what you say. I think there's a person here who has a voice, who has something to bring to this character. Allow them to express it. Be more open, basically, rather than closed. Say, how do you see this person? What would you do? I think you can find something really interesting then from your actor if you open it up in that way, rather than just, that's a thing that I think, you sort of see actors, I don't know, slightly recoil as they're just told by a director to I mean, and maybe I'm being romantic, but the best directors I've worked with have allowed the actors to bring something. And sometimes you're watching an actor in an audition and you're like, oh my goodness, I would never have thought of that.
Yeah.
I've read this script so many times and I've never seen that version, and that version is, an actor leaves and everyone's like, that is better than anything any of us ever thought. So allow them to do that, allow them to do their jobs.
That leads me on really nicely to our first actor question. So it's all about interpreting a role. So from an actor's side, do you have any advice for actors on how they can decide on how they interpret the role? So if they've been given the sides, there's not too much direction in the email before the tape or the Zoom or the in-person. Do you have any advice around how they can get to the point where they're like, right, this is what I think this is going to be?
I think it's about going to that casting and asking. I think what happens in castings is that actors forget that they have any kind of voice, and they forget that it's a collaborative process. So it's about going in and saying, is there a specific way that you see this role or this scene that you've given me? And then if people say no, you've been given the freedom to just play. Most of the time, people, that's what people say. They say, I just want to see what you're going to do with the material. You know, for me, it's all about finding authenticity. And the only way I think that you can do that as an actor is to base it upon something real. So, and then the only thing that I think you can really base it upon that's real is your own experience, which is why usually the best actors, you feel like you know them.
Yeah.
And you don't, but it comes from a true place. So it doesn't mean that the person will make the same, you know, if you're playing a serial killer, it doesn't mean that, you know, you have to dig deep into that role and find out what you'd do if you were a killer. But the scene is usually something very simple. The scene is usually someone having a conversation or emoting a feeling, or so we all know those things. So if that's kept in a place of honesty, usually the performance is really good. It may not be the right performance for that piece, but what will come away knowing is that you're a good actor with good instincts. So
Yeah.
that's it. You were given scenes to show us something about that person.
Yeah.
It's actually a lot more simple than people think it is. I think they get bogged down in the role and showing us a whole role, and it's not that. What's this person doing at this moment?
Yeah, that's really interesting. And by the way, guys, I just thought I should mention this is recorded and it is going to be going out on our YouTube channel. So if you do want to come back to any of this advice later, you will be able to. Just because I think that, and what you said earlier about, you know, saying no to roles and your ideas around that is really, really good advice. So you can come back to this later, just to let you all know. Based upon that, Lola has asked if you're going for roles that they might not have previously been seen for. So what you were mentioning there about earlier about being put into a box, or maybe just you don't want to be seen for certain roles anymore. Have you got any advice for that? Like if an actor wants to break through their usual, I hate to use, but their usual type, have you got any advice for how they can do that?
Yeah, I mean, the problem is that probably you can't. It's about us doing it. So that is the difficulty. The only thing I can say is to keep on thinking about the casting directors that you really want to work with. And when I say this, I usually mean I would really look at the casting director's work and sorry.
I thought
my baby's here. He's going to have a kind of horror moment. He's not supposed to be in this room, but he is. So anyway, so I think it's about looking, you know, having a think about the people that you want to work with, but not the people that maybe you admire, but people that cast actors that you are like. So the sort of actors that, because I think that's a confusion sometimes. If you, as we talked about earlier, casting directors do have a type usually. So who casts actors that are like me? Doesn't mean that look like you, but who that have a similar vibe, you know, a similar style to me. And once you find that, approach those people and ask to come in for small roles if you haven't seen them, because what you're asking those people to do, you know, if they see you do a small role and you're great, they'll get you in again and again, and for bigger roles and for different roles. So that's it. It's about starting a relationship with people. That's the only way I would sort of say it.
Yeah. So do you have any advice? Tim has asked if you've got any advice around reaching out to casting directors then. And if there's nothing specific, you were talking about generals earlier. Yeah. Do you have any advice around what the...
Yeah, it's really hard to get generals, I think. It's obviously a bit easier at the moment if people aren't working so much, and Zoom culture probably will change things, give people a bit more time. So that's great. But still, you know, people don't have that much time. They have lives, they have My whole thing is keep it simple. A lot of people spend a lot of time writing really long emails. I just want the information and I want it quickly. And what's great sometimes is like, say you're in something on television, or, you know, giving a link, being like, here's a link to something I'm in minute 14:01. And then it's like, oh my goodness, I can look straight away and find you, rather than, you know, having to trawl through to a show to find you. So stuff like that, making it as simple as possible for me to look, is truly, truly amazing. It doesn't need to be, it's just, hi, I'm here, I'm available, here's a link to my CV.
Yeah.
That's all I need to know. Yeah. So there are no tricks really, but what happens is sometimes people do that at exactly the right time, and you're doing something and you're so, yeah, there've been, especially actually, you know, over lockdown, where I had things that sort of were put on hold. People would email and I'd be flagging and be like, when that comes back, that person looks really right. But I just need to find the information. You're this person, you're based here. If you've got previous credits, these are previous credits, there's a link. That's all I need. You don't need to flatter me. You don't need to sort of talk me through everything. Someone the other day sent an email and they were like, a surprise for you. I got very excited, and it was just their CV, which is lovely, but it's not a surprise for me. I took it too literally. Just keep it simple. I was disappointed, which I shouldn't be, because their CV is a lovely thing.
Oh my gosh. So you spoke about where they're based, right? So Triss has asked, does an actor's location have a major effect on their chances of getting seen for an audition?
Well, I mean, now more than ever, no. Now more than ever, that's great. You know, it's different. Different projects, different things. Some projects, it's very much like, this is based here, we need people from here because that's easier. I don't know what's going to happen now, and if that is actually going to become something that's even more complicated because of how the world is now. And you're going to need, you know, if people are traveling, then you're going to need to take that into consideration. But in terms of auditioning, it's much more open, which is great, because I've been doing lots and lots of Zoom auditions, and people aren't afraid of them as they were before, or they're not foreign. You know, people are getting, it's never going to replace being in the room, but because people have done them and have now been finding success through them,
yeah,
it's not that, oh no, unless that person's in the room, we can't see them at all. And there are things that actually I've found over this period that I think they're brilliant for. Again, it will never replace the room, but when someone's being quite method and gets themselves into quite a state, to know they're in their own home and can go and have a cup of tea afterwards and be safe is amazing, rather than just sort of sending them into the streets of Soho being like, you know, are they going to be okay because they've taken themselves to quite a dark place or emotional place, or, you know, difficult place, to sort of then be like, thank you, bye-bye. It's like, oh, okay, they're at home. So stuff like that has been actually really interesting. I also think that over time there are certain things you see from how people enter a room, get a vibe from them, la la la. Sometimes just someone comes in and you're like, oh, they're not right, and it's nothing that they've done, but you just know that they're not that character. Yeah They may be someone else, but they're not this person. And I think over time we'll learn those things over Zoom. Do you know what I mean? As I think we are anyway, just by doing Zooms more often. So yeah, I do think it. And, you know, the one thing I'd really say is get really good at self-taping.
Yeah, so
Because
somebody,
at least for the initial stages, that's how it's going to go.
So somebody's just asked, actually, they're anonymous, but they've asked, what are some self-tape no-nos? What should people be avoiding?
Yeah, I mean, the thing for me with a self-tape is just, it's about you. Do you know what I mean? So looking at the room I'm in now, there's a mirror, there's 2 plant pots. Just keep it plain, keep it simple. just plain background, just you, nothing that I can distract me basically from looking at you. Really think about the person reading in with you. If you've got someone to read in with you, if you haven't got someone to read in with you and it's just you, that's the way it is and it's fine, and we're sort of used to it. For me, never not have anyone. So never just do your own lines and nothing else. It doesn't work for some reason. It feels really weird. It feels quite a disjointed conversation. Someone needs to do, or even if it's like I said, it can be you. We need to hear that other dialogue. For me anyway. Otherwise, I just I don't think it makes much sense. Please label your tapes. People just send self-tapes that are called like IMG 15 la 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 off, whereas I might have asked for 50 tapes. You're not the only one. Basically, make it as easy as possible for me to get your tape, upload it, and be able to pass it on to people. You know, find your perfect way of sending it, whether it's Vimeo or Dropbox or whatever. How do you send it? But just make it easy for me to download, make the files not too big. All that technical stuff, it matters. And for me, some people will be really against this. So, you know, it's up to you. If it seems really simple and there's one way to play it, listen, if you're walking into a, you know, cafe and there seems for you to order some toast and get irate with someone and it's that simple, fine. But if there's more than one way to play it, then I'm cool with you sending more than one take if they're different.
Yeah.
But only two, no more than two, and they have to really vary. Then for me that makes sense, because, you know, lots of people do send two, and sometimes that's the person getting the role if there's more than one way to play it. Yeah. Someone once sent me like 8 and it's too many. It's too confusing for me to then have to pick.
Yeah.
You be in charge of picking your best tapes. I also think it's really important if you're doing self-tapes. For me, I treat it like a casting. So I would learn the material, look at the material, feel comfortable with it. And then I would give myself like 20 minutes to do it like you would have in a casting. Because what can happen is that people's tapes aren't fresh. Because maybe they'll have got it 3 days ago, and over the 3 days, done it more and more, watched it again, been like, no, that wasn't right. So by the time they send you this take, it's laboured. It's got no energy.
Yeah. Cool.
Because what you've got to remember is, if you're taping, it's not going to be perfect. You know, even if you come in, it's not going to be perfect. I've never ever watched anything I've worked on and been like, that's what they did in the room. It's always come on from there. It's a start. We're just looking for you. And I will always say to a director, if it's a tape, we've given them no notes. So anything that's interesting that you like about someone, let's explore. So remember that. Remember to trust us and just do what you can do. Yeah.
Brilliant. So we'll round off chat with just a little bit of your perspective on how things are going in your world for COVID, but I just want to give like a good overview of how things are moving. Are you back at like full capacity as what you were in March, or is things still slower, different than before? Than before.
Yeah, I think different people are going to have, you know, different offices work differently. There were lots of things that I was working on that are supposed to have shot by now that haven't. But some of those jobs have different issues, which are the reasons why they haven't shot. What you know, since lockdown has been eased, I worked on a show for Channel 4 called Lady Parts, which is going to finish shooting at the end of October, and started shooting at the 30th of August. So that's been a really long shoot. Touch wood, you know, we've got through it in this new time. Lots of other casting directors I know, they are shooting again. So it's slightly less than before. But I think that's going to be also to do with the fact that before there may have been actors that were on more than one thing at once, and you would schedule things so you could work together. We did manage it with some people in Lady Parts, and that's great, but there will be less of that obviously due to sort of, you know, how it works between productions. So that's going to make things harder, but it's definitely starting up again properly, which is really exciting.
Yeah.
And also more than that, it's feasible, because that was the thing that people were most scared about is, you know, can it really work? Or because it's not just your cast, it's all your crew. Yeah. How do all these people, you know, work together? I'm sure it is not as much fun on set as it used to be. There's also things we'll have to speak to people, you know, after these experiences to see, but, you know, there's less bodies, which might be nicer. You don't have everyone's agents and the execs of whatever channel all popping, you know, can't just pop down as easily. So maybe it's just about getting to it and doing the work, which could be lovely.
Yeah, exactly. Amazing. Well, I'm just going to round off with a comment that we've got here in the chat box. So Tina Marie has just said, your perspective and input has been tremendous confirmation and powerful new nuggets for me as an actor and a filmmaker. So yeah, I concur. Thank you so much for all of your advice, and it's been really, really helpful for everyone, I'm sure. If anybody wants to reach you on social media, you've got Twitter, right? What is that?
Yeah, so my work Twitter is at Aisha Casting. And then I also have an Instagram that's at Aisha Bywaters Casting. So yeah, please feel free. And then yeah, there's a website, www.aishabywaters.com, and an email address, info@aishabywaters.com. To be fair, I'm much better on, if you want to send me stuff on email than on Instagram or Twitter. I find that, I'm just going to tell you to email me. Yeah. I will quickly say before I go as well, I just saw one comment about someone asking, you know, if I don't have a show reel, should I make one? No, is my answer to that. If you don't have a show, you don't have a show reel, and that's fine. What you don't want to do is make it possible for people to not meet you. Don't give anyone any reason to not meet you. And by making a show reel that might not be up to the standard of professional work, might give people the opportunity not to meet you. If you don't have a show reel, I'm going to have to ask you to come in for a casting.
Yeah.
But just, everyone should just trust their instincts, really. You know what are the right things to do. You are your asset. All the actors that you love them because of something that's unique to them. So that is your commodity. Don't forget it. Don't try and sort of appease us. Show us you, and then we'll know how to cast and work with you. And that's why it's exciting. So I wish everyone lots of luck.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Also, our Twitter is at Backstage. Our Instagram is at BackstageCast. I am at Hannah Casting. If you've enjoyed today, which I can see so many of you have, thank you so much for listening along and all of your questions. It's been amazing. Please do tweet us and let us know if you've enjoyed it, and we will be back with more over the coming weeks. This isn't going to end. We started this at the beginning of lockdown, and things are still going strong. So thanks so much for watching along, and thank you so much for joining us, Aisha. It's been amazing.
Have a lovely evening. Take care.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.